the coordinator of the Spokesperson Training Program, Sarah Lyons.
Good afternoon. In the winter of 2011, Independent Voting launched a campaign to lobby Congress for hearings on the second-class status of independents. And to enrich that campaign, we began offering trainings to leaders who wanted to develop their capacity to serve as spokespeople for independents in their areas. 71 people signed up for the first training. Yeah. And you saw some of the results in the video that opened the conference this morning. I have another video for you. It's a special training video. And it provides a look at a typical day in the life of an independent who's learning to become a leader, spokesperson, and some of the very unexpected challenges they face when suddenly circumstances require that they speak for the movement. So let's take a look. That was Charlie Chaplin, of course, in the film classic Modern Times. And I think you'll all agree, very typical situation for an independent. You're out for a walk one day. Suddenly you find yourself out in front, and you have no choice but to lead in these postmodern times. But I'm very proud of the work that we've done in the spokesperson training. We meet via conference call every 6 to 8 weeks. 30, 40 leaders join the call, which lasts an hour. And I give updates on our latest political initiatives, answer questions about how to respond to various things reporters might throw at you, organize role playings, and support the participants to take risks. And after the call, everyone goes to work. They start drafting letters to the editor and op-eds, getting meetings with Congress people, getting themselves invited to speak before groups. And we stay in touch by phone and email and navigate together whatever comes up in the process of their putting across their independent message. And I want to invite everyone here today to join us on a future spokesperson training call. The most fundamental thing that I do is to support independents to tell their story about why they became an independent. That's what resonates with audiences, and that's what shatters the myth that independents are really just Democrats and Republicans in disguise. And that's what gives others an opportunity to recognize their own independence. I've asked a group of 12 leaders to distill their inspiring stories into 1 minute each by telling us why they became independents. So please welcome to the stage Randy Miller, Ramon Pena, Alvader Frazier, John Dowland, Brandy Martindale, Cynthia Carpatios, Michael Lewis, David Cherry, Ramon Pena.
that carry on.
Ladies and gentlemen from Florida, Choice Edwards.
Hello, Independents, and welcome back. I am Choice Edwards, and I am a recovering partisan political puppet. I have lived in Florida for the past 16 years, or if you check our election results, it's Florida. I was a registered Republican for 40 plus years. At 26 years of age, I was elected to the Indiana State Legislature as a Republican. However, in more recent times, as small factions within the GOP started moving further on social issues to the political right than I was comfortable, I had to examine my future in a party that more and more had the tail wagging the dog. You see, I did not leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me. The party of Lincoln had become Dixiecrats. The party had changed, but I had not. Consequently, I considered pledging my allegiance to the Democrat Party. But me, being a political animal, I had to join some political cartel, didn't I? But then I thought, why? Why must I be a member of any private political club? Heck, I might as well join the Kiwanis or the Lions Club in order to vote. So at last, I had thrown off the yoke of partisan political puppetry. So now as an independent, an unaffiliated or no party affiliated voter, I don't have to be labeled with those in either party with whom I may disagree. And I disagree plenty, with elements in not only the two major political parties, but with elements in all political parties. I thought, what an abuse of my American right to vote in each and every election for whom I choose. I also thought, how could political parties be given such sway over the electoral process and the public accept it? It made me livid that my taxes helped to pay for a private political party event to select persons for public office. I thought, that's just not fair. That's just not democracy. That made me realize that the primary system in Florida and elsewhere had to be challenged and had to be changed, and the sooner the better. And that is why I am involved with the effort in Florida and nationwide to secure the rights of independents to vote in each and every election. We need to take the power from them and return it to we the people.
And from Ohio, Cynthia Carpathios.
It's wonderful to be here among fellow independents. Thank you so much to the conference conveners for creating this context for us to be together. In November 2011, one of the most heated issues on the ballot in Ohio was a referendum to overturn a collective bargaining bill pushed through the state legislature by our newly elected Republican governor. Though I found the bill to be overreaching, I also thought it was trying to address real issues, serious issues. As the campaign went on, I started getting calls from the Democratic Party asking me to pledge to support the referendum against the bill. I told the caller that I was conflicted, that I didn't like the bill, and at the same time felt that we needed to address those issues in some way. The caller sounded indignant and asked me whether I was standing with them on Election Day or not. Either I was with them or I was against them. To be able to discuss the issue without taking sides from the start wasn't even a possibility. There was no room for dialogue, no room for exploring or looking at things from a new place. This is how things function in our current hyper-partisan political environment. Our country's issues are serious. Rigid positions, game playing, arm twisting, negotiations, these aren't the ways to address them. For America to move ahead, we need to be creating different sorts of environments where we can work together on what steps to take in addressing the many thorny issues that face us as a nation, and where we personally can grow and develop. We need to be able to talk with each other without knowing where the conversation will end up, and be willing to allow something new to emerge. I believe that it's independents who can lead the way in creating such environments. This is the world I want to be part of building. That's why I'm an independent.
From Utah, Randy Miller.
Hi, everybody. I was a 20-year-old Mormon missionary in North Dakota when Ross Perot ran for president in 1992. I didn't vote that year, but I was intrigued by the thought that the traditional two-party seesaw lacked the potential to break free from the very problems it perpetuated. I returned from my mission and in 1995 enlisted in the Army National Guard. 9 years later, I deployed to Iraq, where my perception of the Republican Party and conservatism evaporated. I was by then an officer and deeply concerned by the uncivilized treatment of prisoners under the Bush administration. Their statements and positions undermined many physical and legal protections for me and my men. What I experienced in Iraq woke me up. I was frustrated and angry with the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party did not appeal to me either. I started looking for something different, like the Reform Party, and I found it in New York City in Quip. I attended my first independent conference here in 2009. About the same time, I established the Utah League of Independent Voters. I heard about Perot in 1992. In 2006, I got involved. That's the power of the lowercase r reform brand that so many of you have been building. Thank you.
From North Carolina, Stephanie Orozco.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank Dr. Ali especially for helping me bring me back to New York City. I'm Stephanie Orozco. I'm a student at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and where Dr. Ali is my professor. I've been independent-minded since I was in high school. Back then, President Obama was running for the first time, and I was an enthusiastic supporter. I knew I aligned myself with the liberal ideals that Democrats purported to act in the name of. However, just as the tide of my Obama fandom was rising, I came to see that I was blindly supporting him when I didn't know anything about the Republican platform. I realized I'd been had. The Democrats had bought my vote without my knowledge. I didn't appreciate the Democratic Party counting on my vote because I was a Black Hispanic female, a demographic that remains Democratic territory. The more I researched, the more I realized I couldn't fit into any political party, and upon that realization, I became staunchly independent. Parties count on partisan divides that lead to nowhere. Becoming an independent meant deciding to become aware and to become more involved, a decision that couldn't be more rewarding. Thank you.
And from New York, Ramon Pena.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Again, my name is Ramon Pena, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the New York County Independence Party. I didn't have to travel far to get to the conference today. I live right here in Manhattan, but politically speaking, I've come a pretty long way. Like most people in my community, I'm what we call a New Yorican. At 18, I registered into the Democratic Party without giving it much thought. I actually hated politics and didn't want anything to do with it. At some point, I got a job with the Republican Party, still without knowing or caring at all about politics. Then about 10 years ago, I met the Independence Party. I went to a few briefings by my mentor, Kathy Stewart, who chairs the Manhattan Independence Party. I heard Dr. Fulani speak on several occasions on television. I met some of the organizers in the movement, and for the first time in my life, I was excited and inspired by what I was hearing. They were saying what I thought I had always felt. Suddenly, I understood why I was unhappy with the Democratic Party. It's because I wasn't a Democrat. I was an independent without even knowing that I was. I registered into the Independence Party, and I have been working very hard to build our movement ever since. Now I'm happy to say I've become a political junkie, an independent political junkie. Thank you.
And from New York, Alveda Frazier.
Good afternoon, Independence Rising. I'd like to thank Jack Salett, Dr. Oh, sorry about that. Good afternoon, Independence Rising. I'd like to thank Dr. Jack Salett and Dr. Lenore B. Fulani and all the organizers that created this conference and all of you that came from everywhere to be here. I was born in Savannah, Georgia in 1952. I was the number 6 of 10 siblings. My mother worked as a kitchen maid in the local Negro hospital. My father owned and operated a small automobile repair shop. During those early years of my childhood, I, like Ike Eisenhower, was the President of the United States. Television was brand new and still all the rage. Miss Rosa Parks refused to take a seat at the back of the bus, and Martin Luther King Jr. became the reluctant and independent leader of a nascent civil rights movement. The Montgomery bus boycott was going to begin, and 4 young black girls would be killed when the KKK dropped bombs on an Alabama Baptist church. Hundreds were severely beaten, stomped, bit by dogs, put in jails and prisons. Goodman, Cheney, and Swerner, Jewish, black, and white young men murdered by the KKK in Mississippi for registering blacks to vote. They joined the ranks of the martyrs and faces of a multiracial movement that ultimately included hundreds of thousands, nationally and internationally. The Vietnam War had become a killing machine. Hundreds of leaders, sung and unsung, emerged, and their forces would not be denied. In my parents' house, we were very involved and hung on to every news report. My dad took some of us to the mass marches that occurred every week. We shared the sadness, anger, and fear that permeated our town. My dad was a member of the NAACP. and the Prince Hall Masons. He was a self-described independent. The civil rights movement gave rise to the anti-war movement, the women's movement, the gay and lesbian movement, the Black Power and the Black Liberation movements. These were all independent movements. The leaders did not emerge from the Democratic or Republican parties. I guess some could say I'm a product of these movements, and that would be simple enough to understand. However, as I grew, I emerged as a troubled youth. Like many others, rebellion took an ugly turn. I was used and abused. I ran away. I became a wayward young soul. I escaped to Atlanta, Georgia. I worked as a short order cook at the White Castles. I was a waitress in soul food restaurants, and I was a cleaning maid at the University of Georgia, University of Georgia Technical. Georgia Tech. Thank you. I was a maid there, and finally, I escaped again, and I joined the Job Corps in New Jersey. There I met members of the Quakers Friends Services Committee and the Communist Party. I was 19 years old. They helped me get into college, and they taught me to become a Marxist, looking to make revolution. My leaders were Gus Hall and Angela Davis, among others. I worked with them in struggle for over 13 years. In 1984, now a young attorney, I became disappointed with the Communist Party and the organized left as I had come to know it. Its proud and independent history notwithstanding, in my opinion, the leadership started down the road to become the left wing of the Democratic Party. In 1985, I met Dr. Lenora B. Fulani and Dr. Frederick D. Newman. They organized me to join their own independent organizations. These organizations embody a philosophy and postmodern Marxist politic. These organizations center around building community as a way to bring different people together to work and play and create ways to change our world. This is very brief, and everything I have said to you continues to impact my life in ways that are so much bigger than everything else and so much bigger than me. For all these reasons, I'm an independent rising. Thank you.
And now from Nevada, Katana Barnes.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. My name is Katana Barnes. I live in Reno, Nevada, and I'm the founder and president of Independent Voters of Nevada. I honestly can't say when I became an independent. I feel I've always been one. I've known since the day I went to register as a voter for the first time that I was neither a Democrat nor a Republican, because I looked over the list of parties and thought about choosing something other than the status quo. Over the years, I registered to vote with several different parties, but I always felt that there was something amiss. Eventually, I realized that I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a libertarian. I'm an independent, through and through. So I finally changed my voter registration to reflect who I am, an independent. Or, as the political system in Nevada refers to us, nonpartisan. One of the reasons that I'm an independent is the fact that my ideals do not fit neatly into any single category, such as conservative, liberal, or moderate. I tend to embrace all of these ideals with regards to a single issue and do not lean more toward one or the other. For example, with regards to social issues, there are areas that my ideals may be considered liberal, and at the same time, there are areas that my ideals may be considered moderate or conservative. Another reason I'm an independent is because I do not support the villainization of people who have different ideals in an attempt to project one as the right one. I believe that this kind of thinking is toxic to the political process because it breeds contempt and hate and prevents compromise and progress. As an independent, I believe the political process should be conducted with respect for everyone involved. Furthermore, I'm an independent because I believe that the political process should be controlled by the voters and not the parties. I'm tired of the political parties granting power over the political process to themselves, especially when there is no constitutional basis for this power grab. In the end, the power must be shifted back to the people, and I believe that independents can make this happen. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with a quote by George Washington. Quote, "However political parties may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things, to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which had lifted them to unjust dominion," end quote. Thank you.
And now from New York, Brandy Martindale.
Good afternoon, independent voters. My name is Brandy Martindale. I am a graduate student at Columbia University studying organizational psychology. I first registered independent nearly a decade ago, and I did so because I needed to decide for myself, based on an individual's past performance, who was the best candidate for any given political position. 10 years later, I'm proud to serve as an executive committee member for the Queens County Independence Party. This organization espouses my own personal values of transparency, equality, openness, and politics that actually serve the people. Like our leader, Jackie Salet, I believe that the product is, in fact, a direct result of the process. If we want better political leaders, we need a better political process. And I'm proud to be part of this movement, part of this independent movement, and I'm proud to be part of a real structural change to create real political changes.
Now from Pennsylvania, John Dowland.
Thank you. Thank you. I was born in Detroit, born an independent. I haven't seen my birth certificate lately, but the independence and freedom are part of my DNA. So I grew up in a rough town and later was adopted, moved to Ohio. When it came time to register to vote, I didn't register. It was, I didn't have time for that kind of stuff. Politics was all a lot of Mickey Mouse. But then a friend of mine, a Vietnamese friend of mine, Tran Van Dien, pointed out that I was responsible for what my country did in the world. And I thought about that, and a few years later, I voted for the first time for a very nice man named McGovern. Thereafter, I tended to vote for the little guy, third parties, and I was living in Manhattan in the early 70s, and a friend of mine was working for a congressman named Ed Koch, whose office was not far from here, and I would help out now and then. And in the store window, in the front door window, I found literature for Bike for a Better City. So I immediately contacted them and started working with them. We organized this massive ride down Fifth Avenue with 2,000 grown-ups biking to work, and Mayor Lindsay joined us. So that was my introduction to bicycle advocacy. My girlfriend at the time then got a job in Philadelphia. I tagged along. Within a year, I had founded the Bicycle Coalition of the Greater Philadelphia. Our work was to make Philadelphia more bicycle friendly, to bring the Dutch touch to Philadelphia, to make accessible to bikes, buildings, bridges, and public transit. If a bridge is open to all users, including bicyclists and pedestrians, it's a more democratic bridge. Okay, so by extension, if a political process is open to all the citizens, it's a more democratic process. So you're seeing my drift here. After a while, I sensed that General Motors really needed us more than we needed General Motors. And to continue the drift, I kind of think that the two parties need us more than we need the two parties. And then a few years ago, I read about a magazine called The Neo Independent, and I said, great, and I sent off a check and a note to an office on Broadway, and I heard nothing. And the check was never cashed, and so then a few months later, I wrote again, and I sent him a copy of a letter I'd sent to Lincoln Chafee, I think. And somebody called me within days and, oh, thank you for your letter. And they said to get in touch with Jen Bullock, who's organizing independence in Pennsylvania. And I did that, and here I am.
Now from Arizona, Brenda Sperduti.
Good afternoon. I'm Brenda Sperduti. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's a little bit hotter than it is here today. Until 2 years ago, I was an active Republican. I had even served as a precinct committeeman for 4 years. There wasn't one particular event that knocked me to my senses. It was more of a gradual realization that the primary agenda of the Republican Party, just like that of the Democrats, had become more about empowering the party and not the people. Eventually, I decided I had had it with partisan politics. In 2010, I signed up with independentvoting.org online. In 2011, I ran in the Phoenix City Council race, a nonpartisan race that I discovered was probably anything but nonpartisan. And then, on July 2nd, 2012, I made my move officially. I registered my conscience, and I switched in Arizona to no party preference. I am proud that I declared my independence of party politics and to be among those former candidates who recognize that changing the political structure is much more important than winning an election. I am now one of the leaders of Independent Voters of Arizona. Last year, I worked hard on the campaign to bring top 2 primaries to Arizona. And while we lost our first time out, we are working to build our grassroots movement so that the next time out, we will win. To me, being American means having the courage to state that I am independent, and I am so glad to be here with you this weekend.
Now from Illinois, David Cherry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I was 7 years old when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April of 1968. And I recall, watching the news coverage with my mother and becoming very interested in learning more about the world that was taking place around me. At the time, I didn't realize that she was in the last month of her life, and she died of breast cancer in May of 1968. So, I continued to, watch the news with my father, and I was increasingly interested in the political process and, felt very fascinated by it and very excited about it and was looking forward to different elections, especially when new people were elected and maybe even bringing in some new ideas and new solutions, to the issues of poverty that were taking place in my community and communities across this country. But with each passing election, I became more disillusioned, more disgusted, more angry at the politicians in the process. And, especially, seeing Democratic and Republican politicians get elected to the presidency, switching back and forth between controlling the House and the Senate. And also, in the various elections in offices, mayor, governor, it didn't seem to make a difference what was happening or who was elected. My community continued to suffer. And this failure of the two-party system has had continues to have devastating consequences for tens of millions of people across this country over a period of generations. And by the time I came to the fall of 1988, I would not have voted in that election had it not been for the campaign of Dr. Lenore Fulani. So I was extremely proud to vote for Dr. Fulani in 1988. My father, who was born in 1910, we both went to the polls on election day, and he also voted for Dr. Fulani in what turned out to be the final time he voted. And he died in July of 1989, and 3 weeks after he died, I met Dr. Fulani in 1989, in August of 1989, and she organized me to be an independent and to learn how to fight for fair elections and democracy, and introduced me to all of you, and that's why I'm very proud to be an independent. Thank you.
And finally, from Kentucky, Michael Lewis.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're all having a great time here like I am. There's not a lot to say to follow up this great panel up here, because my journey into independent politics is most likely a lot like yours and theirs. It started with questions. I questioned the political dynamics of what was going on in this country. I was a young man. I was wanting to start my own American dream. I wanted to be involved in my community. I wanted to be a good example for my children. And what I realized is I did not fit in their political box that they told me I had to be in. So my questions led to learning of trailblazers like Jackie Salin, Dr. Laura Fulani, and these individuals. That was me finding my voice, my independent voice, and I'm very happy that I've been able to do that. A little sad, though, because over the last 2 years since our last conference, I've lost 3 mentors that I would just like to mention today. One of those you may know, Dr. Fred Newman. 2 others from Kentucky, Gatewood Galbraith, who was a perennial candidate for governor, but a fighter for us, and Norman Davis, that we've all lost within these last 2 years. So my political independence is because of those trailblazers and individuals like that.
Let's give them all a round of applause.